Welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. We're so glad you could join us today on a beautiful day here in Pocatello. Hot. It's probably hot where you are. I'm glad we're not in Phoenix or Las Vegas. Oh boy. Anyway, we're glad you could join us. Hope you had a really good Father's Day weekend. And if you're like me and had your birthday as part of that, well, happy birthday to you. Got a lot to cover, so let me start as I do every week at this time with a reminder about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered, nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. Very straightforward, and I start my program every week because if you don't go any further than this, please call Compassion and Hope. See what you can do to help them. They are a very small organization. They are all about life for the baby and for the mother. They have one full-time staff, and they have two part-times and a couple of non-paid helpers. And believe me, folks, they're just scraping by. They really need your help. So they're a shoestring operation, and if you would be so kind as to call them on your cell phone, or you can text them, I guess, I don't know. Call them at 208, which is the area code for the whole state of Idaho, 208-478-HOPE, Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. They always welcome cash, so if you can do that, send them a check, however you can do it, but they can use other help too. This past week has been an absolute horror, as you know, from the little boy who was dragged away by an alligator, and a miracle of miracles, they found the body intact. Unfortunately, the baby is dead, 2-year-old child. I was astonished that the alligator didn't eat the baby, that they eat anything, but at least the parents were able to bury their baby. And the horrific shooting in Orlando, Florida, and that's something that the shockwaves of that are going to reverberate for a long, long time. I think it's important because these things have a way of, they kind of gain their own traction and they go off in different directions. And so it's important that we remember what has actually happened here. There was a mass murder at a nightclub. Now, obviously it's getting a lot of play because it's a homosexual nightclub. And as, what's his name? Raman, the guy that's the mayor for Chicago and was Obama's right-hand man, still one of his advisors, Raul, I just can't get it, but you know who I'm talking about. As he ever said, never let a good tragedy go to waste. And boy, a lot of people are tagging on to this horrific mass murder in Orlando. Let's put aside one thing. Yes, this was in a homosexual nightclub, so we're going to guess that 99% of the people there were probably homosexual, and that's it. The important thing here is that it was a mass murder. And it would differ had it been a mass murder of Boy Scouts or nuns or people at a campground. A mass murder is a mass murder. Now, the fact that it was done in the name of Islam, that's getting a lot of play, and it should. Because as you know, as we've been seeing now since, what, 9/11, we've been seeing incident after incident in graphic detail, the murders of people around the world by Islam, people who call themselves Muslims. Now, one of the things that, there was an interesting, in fact, let me share this. There was a letter in June 19th, that was a Sunday, in the June 19th Idaho State Journal, letter to the editor from a Muslim ISU graduate by the name of Hidyatullah Hassan. And it reads, it's very short, it reads, at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the 29-year-old Omar Mateen opened fire at the gay nightclub The Pulse in Orlando, Florida. His cowardly act ended in the death of 50 innocent human beings. Well, there were 49 murder victims, and then he died, so yeah, they're 50. As a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Islam, I wholeheartedly condemn this savage act. My thoughts and prayers are with all who have been affected by this senseless violence. As a Muslim, I am sad that there are those who kill in the name of my religion when clearly the Qur'an states, quoting, "Whosoever killed a person, it shall be as if he had killed all mankind," quoting 533, Surah 533. I want everyone to know that Islam and the Qur'an in no shape or form allow or call for the killing of anyone based on their sexual orientation. This act, therefore, is nothing but an act of terrorism and should be condemned as such. I should note that the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Islam, has recently stated, quote, "We can all see how satanic influences are leading to brutality and murder. Innocent people are being slaughtered, and perpetrators claim they will be rewarded with a place in heaven, Muslim paradise. It is clear to me that it is time for the leaders of the world, especially the Muslim world, to unite in a forceful disassociation from all acts of terrorism as exemplified by the Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I finish my letter with my condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones in this shooting and with my prayers for those who are recovering." And as you can see, it was very short and to the point. Several points need to be made here. First of all, I congratulate this man on making an expression of condolence and grief on behalf of the victims and, you know, speaking for Islam. Well, not exactly. And I say that because he has quoted a Quranic verse, and he has actually incorrectly quoted the Quranic verse. Now remember, he says that he's quoting Surah 5:33, "Whosoever killed a person, it shall be as if he had killed all mankind." Well, that's not accurate. In fact, Surah 5:33 is a much, much different message. Surah 5:32 is a similar message. Let me just share that with you. Quran 5:32, Nazam and neglecting context. Nazam is a regular on our blog and an active proponent for Islam in the United Kingdom. I met Nazam this past summer in London. He's very congenial, and I really like the guy. All affability aside, he has struck a nerve that I simply cannot ignore. This is out of answeringmuslims.com. You can look this up. In the comment thread of a recent post, he refers to the would-be Times Square murderer and the man who initially pointed out the danger to the police. Nazam said this, just a little quote from the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims. And then there's this quote, "If anyone killed a person, it would be as if he killed the whole of mankind. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole of mankind." And that's from the Quran chapter 5, verse 32, not 33. Just think who gets the reward, all right? What bothers me is Nazam has ripped, and we could put this gentleman in this place of Nazam, use him if we wanted to, has ripped 532 out of context. And being a Muslim apologist, he probably knows it full well. In fact, 532 is the most ripped off out of context verse of the Quran in the West. Muslims and even news organizations often refer to this verse in order to show that Islam teaches murder is wrong and saving lives is the prescribed action for all people. But this is absolutely not what this verse says. In fact, it says almost the exact opposite, that Muslims can kill those who are their enemies. Now, I need to remind you here, I'm assuming most of you are not Muslim scholars, and I don't put myself up as an Islamic scholar, but having studied it for a while, I guess you could say I've been in school, I'm scholarly to a point, so I've got an understanding that perhaps you don't have, and let me share that with you. Remember this, when Muhammad declared himself to be the prophet of Allah, the God that he took out of this pantheon of gods to elevate to the point of being the supreme God, Allah. Remember that the Quran was written, the whole thing was done by one man, Muhammad, and it was for Muslims. Because remember, if you've been in, listened to any of my prior broadcasts, I've shared with you that in the Quran, the Muslims are taught that they are the super religion. Now I say not the super race, they don't do it that way. In fact, they are very good at playing the race card when it supports whatever they want to support in Islam. But the Quran tells Muslims that they are superior to everybody, including many other Muslims, but that's not the way it's stated. It just says that if you're an infidel, if you are not a Muslim, you're nobody. I'm paraphrasing this very broadly. So when Muhammad was allegedly speaking for Allah, he was speaking to Muslims, and he was directing his comments to Muslims. He doesn't care about the infidel. The infidel has two choices, convert or die. If he converts, then he's speaking to him. But up to that point, he's not. All right. Here is 532 in its context, with all words included. On that account, we ordained for the children of Israel that if anyone slew a person, unless it be for murder or for spreading mischief in the land, it would be as if he slew the whole people. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole people. The only people he's interested in are Muslims. Then, although there came to them our apostles with clear signs, yet even after that, many of them continued to commit excesses in the land. Here are the salient points. One, it explicitly states that this was a commandment to the children of Israel, that is, the Jews. This is not a commandment to all people, and it certainly should not be misused if this is Allah's command to Muhammad's people. Now, you need to understand something. Excuse me, I think allergies are going crazy here, folks, so bear with us. You need to understand something. If you haven't already figured it out, I've shared this with you in the past. When Muhammad came up with his visions, his revelations, his Qur'an, he ripped off the Talmud, and he ripped off a lot of the Christian teachings, and then he threw in some of the pagan teachings, and he made up his own religion, and he called it the Qur'an. And when it was amplified and it had Sharia and everything else, it became Islam. Remember, the Qur'an is only 14% of Islam. So Islam is not correctly portrayed when they call it as a religion. It is only part religion. It's not like if you're a Methodist or a Mormon or Baptist or Lutheran or Catholic, where that is your religion and that's it. The Quran, being the holy book of Islam, really is only 14% of that whole thing. It is a completely independent state. I don't know how to express this. Well, I'm getting off the point here. So when Muhammad is talking, he's ripping off stuff from Talmud, and I'm going to quote to you from Talmud, because Talmud says the same thing that Allah is alleging here, that Muhammad is alleging. And remember, again, I mean, it's important to put all these things in context. And forgive me, the teacher in me has a way of coming out when I want to put these in such a way that you put them all together. Remember that Muhammad, before he became the prophet, was a caravan driver. And he drove caravans all over the Middle East into Jerusalem and all other places. He was exposed to every religion of the day. He knew other religions. He knew Judaism. He knew, remember, Christianity supersedes or predates Islam by 700 years. So he knew, the Christians were already very well entrenched or embedded in the Middle East. The Jews had been there for 3,000 or 4,000 years before the Christians. So he had a fertile place to get his ideas of what his new religion was going to be. Pardon me, but being a man of clever, devious, and insidious, but not necessarily the brightest bulb in the box, he had to release or rip off the other religions. And that's what this is all about. 532 is a direct rip-off of the Talmud. And I'll share that with you in a moment. All right, number two, even if this were a command to the Muslim, there's still an escaped clause, unless it be for murder or spreading mischief in the land. If someone is spreading mischief, he can still be killed. Now let's think for a moment. The would-be Times Square bomber considers Americans to be spreading mischief in Palestine and around the world. Practically all Muslims think this, even the ones who are American citizens. There was an interesting study recently released, I think it was by Pew Research, a very credible research, that showed among Muslims living in America, some whom call themselves Americans, some who are whatever, at least 33% of them felt that murdering in the name of Allah was fine. A third of them. And there are over 3 million of them in this nation. That's at least 1 million that think it's okay to murder you if you're not a Muslim. And to enforce, and that same third, or maybe more, want to see the implementation of Sharia in place of our Constitution. That's pretty frightening. Okay, as if this weren't obvious enough for the verse itself, the Quran further expounds this verse at this point in the very next verse. Remember, 532 addressed this business of if you kill somebody, you killed everybody, if you save somebody and all. 533 says, now this is the one that this fellow misquoted, 533, the punishment of those who wage war against God, Allah, and his apostle, Muhammad, and strive with might and main for mischief through the land is execution, or crucifixion, or the cutting off of hands and feet from opposite sides, or exile from the land. That is their disgrace in this world, and a heavy punishment is theirs hereafter. So this fellow, I'm sure he was well-meaning, but Hidayatullah Ahsan, has misquoted the book that he swears that he is an advocate of, and that is the Qur'an. Now, it is important here that I share something else with you, and that has to do with the, let's see if I put this aside here. I hope I can get to it quickly. This has to do with the Ahmadi Muslims. In a nutshell, in the Orthodox Muslim world, Orthodoxy would be basically Sunnis and Shiites, even though, just to put it in a context that Westerners understand, both the Sunnis and the Shia recognize Muhammad as the prophet and Allah as being their God, and Muhammad is the prophet of their God. But they differ in some of the different things like ascension and who gets to be whom. The Sunni believe that you have to be I think you had to be a direct, and don't quote me on this, I have to go back and look at it, direct descendant of Muhammad, and the Shia said that they could have the nephew of Muhammad as the next prophet. So there are some things. It's rather like Methodists, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Catholics. They are all Orthodox, they're all Trinitarian, but they do differ in some of their Bible teaching, their doctrine, but they are still of the one faith in a manner of speaking. They're Trinitarian. So you've got the same thing here with the Sunni and the Shia, who are very happily killing each other, the Salafi and some of the others. Those would be the Orthodox. And they say that Ahmadi Muslims really aren't Islamic. They're not Muslim. On a regular basis, and seemingly always after a jihadist attack, news stations reach out to individuals who claim to speak for Islam and who, by the way, happen to repeat the mantra that Islam is a religion of peace and prohibits violence. Popular among these spokesmen are two individuals named Haris Safar and Qasim Rashid, and when they are speaking, the caption below each usually includes the word Ahmadiyya Muslim Community in USA. This is not only informational, it also provides a caveat for those who know about Ahmadi Muslims. This article explains why. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community was founded in 1889 by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and initially headquartered in Qadian, India. Ahmad claimed to be the metaphorical second coming of Jesus of Nazareth and the divine guide whose advent was foretold by the prophet of Islam, Muhammad. You may recall I shared this with you some time back, that true-believing Orthodox Muslims will tell you that according to their teachings, that Jesus will return, that he is right now in waiting, so to speak, that he will return and that he will bow to Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, and he will lead an army against non-believers. That's how they portray Jesus of Nazareth. Well, that's apostate, obviously. And that in itself, in my mind, tells you the satanic roots of Islam. I mean, that's the way I look at it as an Orthodox Christian. All right. The Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA was established in 1921, and the Ahmadiyya Muslim community now spans about 190 countries with an estimated 10 to 20 million adherents. The community's international headquarters are in London, England. Now, it's quite possible you've never heard of the Ahmadiyya. They are, we'll perhaps get into that. Ahmadiyya Muslims claim they are Muslims who are following the true Islam, which they state is based on peace with others. Pardon me, they obviously have not read the same Qur'an that I've read. But that is not how they are perceived by Sunni Muslims, who make up almost 90% of the 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. Consider this survey of the status of Ahmadis in some of the Sunni Muslim countries. Sorry, folks, like I said, it's allergy season here. In the early 20th century, Ahmadis were persecuted and some were sentenced to death for apostasy. By circa 1930, there were reportedly no more Ahmadis in Afghanistan. In 2008, the president of Indonesia signed a decree ordering the Ahmadis to stop practicing their version of Islam. Ahmadis have been killed and their mosques have been attacked. In 2014, the Supreme Court of Kyrgyzstan upheld a 2011 decision that prohibited Ahmadis from registering with the state as a religion and from gathering for for religious activity. They are not recognized as Muslims. And it goes on: Malaysia, Mauritius, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. Now remember, Saudi Arabia is the That is the center. That's the PowerPoint. That's the center of the universe for all things Islam. None of these folks consider Ahmadi Muslims to be Muslims. As a matter of fact, it's quite possible that if I were sitting in the room with a Sunni who wanted to kill me, of course, with an Ahmadi, it's quite possible he would kill the Ahmadi first, because I, as a Christian, am known as a follower of the book, and followers of the book are supposedly not to be harmed. Now, the followers of the book are the Jews and the Christians, and supposedly in the Qur'an they're not supposed to be injured. They're supposed to be left alone, but it doesn't work that way in Islam. Okay, so I tell you that because it's easy to get things misconstrued and contorted. I would venture to say that our newspaper and the staff there, and this is not meant as anything other than informational, I doubt that anybody there really knows anything about Islam, or what little they know they got from other sources that told them that it's the religion of peace, if they even care, and perhaps they don't. So when they put this letter in there, which is fine, this is this man's opinion, but according to Islam, the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Alawites and the rest of them, this man is not considered to even be a Muslim. Interesting. Now, going back to what I was sharing with you about Muhammad ripping off things from the Jews, from the Talmud. This is from a website you can go to. It's talmudfaithweb.com. Saving a person is like saving the world. And says the accusation, the movie's Schindler's List, they're using this just as an example. The movie Schindler's List lied when it quoted the Talmud as saying, "He who saves a single life saves the entire world." The Talmud really only advocates saving Jewish lives, not any life. This accusation is partly true. One place where this passage appears only deals with Jews. Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 37a. Whoever destroys a soul from Israel, the scripture considers it as if he had destroyed an entire world. And whoever saves a life from Israel, the scripture considers it as if he had saved an entire world. Now remember, Talmud was written long before Christianity hit the earth. So you could say perhaps that Christianity embraces the same thing, since Christianity's roots are in Israel, in the Jewish faith. So, I mean, you could do this as an extrapolation perhaps. However, this is not the only place in Talmudic literature that this passage appears. In the Jerusalem, also called Palestinian Talmud, the passage does not single out Jews. Here's how it appears. And this is Jerusalem Talmud, Sanhedrin 421, sub 22a. Whoever destroys a soul, it is considered as if he destroyed an entire world. And whoever saves a life, it is considered as if he saved an entire world. This passage refers to any soul, whether Jewish or Gentile. Evidently, the movie's writers or producers were referring to this more general and universal passage and not the more particular one quoted above. This passage appears in this universal form in more than just the Talmud. It also appears like this in 3 other places in rabbinic literature. This passage that refers to saving all people, whether Jewish or Gentile, can be found in Perkai di Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 47, Eliyahu Rabbah 11, Yalkut Shimonai, on Exodus 166. I know that's just, I'm just giving you the sources here. So, we now understand that, first of all, this man, no matter how well-intentioned he was, and I by no means mean to denigrate his effort on trying to say something peaceful, unfortunately, he just misunderstands the message and even quoted the wrong verse. The one he wanted to quote was 32, and he quoted 33, which is cutting off the hands and killing you and all of that. It's important for us to realize and to remember that Islam is not just some little single-dimensional thing. It is multifaceted. It's huge. There is so much that you could, well, Islamic clerics spend lifetimes, just like some rabbis spend lifetimes, studying their religion. The problem is that they're studying a false doctrine and that they're building it to make it into their reality. All right. Now, it's interesting also about this this mass murder in Orlando, that it's being done. It happened right in the middle of Ramadan. Now, you and I, most of us, don't really understand what Ramadan is because we have it has nothing to do with Christians, Jews, Mormons, anybody else. This is a strictly an Islamic, read Muslim holiday, and it's a month. It's not just a day or a couple hours. It's a whole month. I'll give you a quick thing on what, and remember, Ramadan is one of the most holy times of the year for Muslims. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar and is observed by Muslims worldwide as a month of fasting to commemorate the first revelation of the Qur'an to Muhammad, according to Islamic belief. This annual observance is regarded as one of the 5 pillars of Islam. The month lasts 29 to 30 days based on the visual sightings of the crescent moon, according to numerous biographical accounts compiled in the hadiths. Pardon me, you remember the hadiths are basically stories, fairy tales if you wish, but they are supposed to be about what Muhammad said during his lifetime, the things he did, and but they are 300 years, 500 years removed from the person of Allah, of Muhammad. So you could question them, but if you're Muslim, you don't question the hadiths, you follow them. The word Ramadan comes from the Arabic root ramida or al-ramad, which means scorching heat or dryness. Fasting is fard, obligatory for adult Muslims, except those who are suffering from an illness, traveling, are elderly, pregnant, breastfeeding, diabetic, or going through menstrual bleeding. Fasting the month of Ramadan was made obligatory, wajib, during the month of Sha'aban in the 2nd year after the Muslims migrated from Mecca to Medina. Fatwas have been issued declaring that Muslims who live in regions with a natural phenomenon such as the midnight sun or polar night should follow the timetable of Mecca. And it goes on. Now, why do I share that with you? Well, because Ramadan is a very bad analogy, but it would be equivalent in the Muslim world to what Easter is to Christians. It is a very important, holy time. And as you know, Easter is not just one weekend, it's 40 days. We celebrate the resurrection for 40 days. So, there again, I hadn't thought of it before, but here again, maybe Ramadan was a ripoff, so to speak, of the Easter observations, the Orthodox observations. And here's what I was telling you about how things can differ between the people who have the same basic orthodoxy. The Eastern Church celebrates Easter 3 months later than the Western Church. It's the same celebration. We are celebrating the risen Christ, the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus, the living risen Christ, God incarnate, Son of the living God, one with the God and the Holy Spirit. Now I'm giving you the whole thing so you understand how it's important to Orthodox Christians. And Ramadan would be the Muslim equivalent. Now, when was the last time you heard of an Orthodox Christian going out and doing mass murder during the Easter celebration? Never. It doesn't happen. It would not even enter the mind of an Orthodox Christian to take this holy time of the year, and you know, there are only 2, super holy times of the year, Christmas and Easter, and they're for similar and yet different purposes. They have the bookends that put it all together, so to speak. Christians don't go out and do mass murders to celebrate Easter, and yet the Muslims have no problem with conducting murders around the world during Ramadan, which is supposed to be their highest and holiest of the year. What a strange religion this is. What a strange interpretation of this. It would be akin to, let's say, Purim or Hanukkah. Let me just give you the Wikipedia version of Hanukkah as a Jewish holiday commemorating the rededication of the Holy Temple, the Second Temple, in Jerusalem at the time of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire. Hanukkah is observed for 8 days and nights, starting on the 25th day of Kislev, according to the Hebrew calendar, which may occur, and it goes on and on. So this is a big deal. In Judaism, Hanukkah is a big deal. We have, at our home, we observe Hanukkah, not because we feel we have to. We do it out of respect for what Hanukkah means. And again, as Orthodox Christians, a great deal of what we believe has its basis in Judaism. Purim, and this is about the book of Esther. The story of Purim is told in the biblical book of Esther. The heroes of the story are Esther, a beautiful young Jewish woman living in Persia, and her cousin Mordecai, who raised her as if she were his daughter. Esther was taken to the house of Ahasuerus, king of Persia, to become part of his harem. King Ahasuerus loved Esther more than his other women, and made Esther queen, but the king did not know that Esther was a Jew because Mordecai told her not to reveal her identity. And if you read, and you know, every year, in Jewish tradition, I'm losing the thread. There's a term that is used. It sounds like an Irish word, actually, and it's the reading of Esther at the time of Purim, to remind the Jews of this particular, where Esther showed incredible courage, going before the king unannounced and uninvited, which could have got her killed, but he loved her enough that he didn't kill her. And then she rescued her people, is what it amounts to. I'm really capsulizing this, but it's a beautiful story, and it's in the Christian Bible, just as it is in the Jewish Bible, if you will. It would be as if Jews went out killing people during the time of Purim, which is an important observation. That's how ridiculous to me, as an Orthodox Christian, this whole business of murdering people during Ramadan. Of course, you have to remember that murder in Islam is perfectly legal, as long as you don't murder another Muslim. But even that can be countenanced. If you're a Sunni, you have to kill Shiites, because the Shia refuse to submit to your version of Islam. If you're an Alawite, you must be killed. I believe the Shia and the Alawite are somewhat allied, you know, they're relatives, so to speak, against the Sunni. The Sunni are the big ones, they're the bad boys. They're the rulers of Islam, as it were. Everywhere you see acts of violence, horror, and all that, almost exclusively it is conducted by Sunni Muslims. Sunni Muslims have their origin in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has been spreading their satanic filth around the world for 14 centuries. 14 centuries. We have allowed them to spend billions upon billions of dollars in our country building mosques and schools to teach their degenerate form of their religion. Well, it's not a degenerate form to them. No, what's the word when you're observant? I lost the thread of it. Anyway, it's the purest form of Islam. And their whole message is kill everybody that disagrees. I mean, that's well, that isn't oversimplifying it. That's pretty much the way it is. Kill everybody that disagrees. Case in point, a little bit more than a year ago, you may remember this, May 4th of 2015, this came from MSNBC, that television station who has shorter ratings than mine, MSNBC, by Alastair Jameson, and it was the report about these two Muslims that were very unhappy with some people who were entering a contest to draw their idea of the likeness of Muhammad. And so these two Muslims went to the school, the school convention center where this contest was being held, with the express purpose of killing people who were insulting their prophet. When was the last time you killed somebody in the name of Joseph Smith, in the name of Moses, in the name of Jesus, the living, risen Christ? When was the last time you did that? Been a while? Yeah. That's not the Western way of doing things. That's not the Christian way of thinking. That's not the Jewish way of thinking. That's the Muslim way. That's the Islamic way. And I tell you, no matter how much you hear about the so-called religion of peace, the more you learn about it, the more you'll find that Islam has, from its very inception, been a religion of murder, of theft, of rape, of pillaging, of burning, of slavery, every horror you can imagine. Now, it has been said that there is no specific passage in Qur'an that says to kill homosexuals. Well, yes and no. That specifically, I'm not sure. But you have to remember that it is okay to kill anybody that does anything against the Prophet or against Allah. And anything would be anything that does not agree with the Qur'an. And remember again, the Qur'an was written by one madman by the name of Muhammad, who declared himself to be the prophet of Allah, the one God that he didn't invent him, he just elevated him to being the supreme God. And yet it only makes up 14% of the whole faith that is known as Islam. As long as it helps Islam to prosper, it is okay to kill, maim, whatever you have to do. Rape, pillage, burn, it doesn't matter, because if it makes Allah happy, according to the Prophet, then it's okay. Remember, the Holy Bible was written by, I forget how many authors, 44 or something like that. Not just one man deciding all this stuff. So there was a year ago, there was this thing that happened. Texas police shot dead 2 gunmen armed with assault rifles who opened fire outside of a Draw Muhammad contest organized in the town of Garland on Sunday. Can you imagine Mormons killing you if you tried to draw a picture of Joseph Smith, what you thought he looked like? There are plenty of pictures around. I mean, you don't have to invent one. Or Jesus the Christ. Well, there were no photographers in his time, so we see many variations of what people think Jesus looks like. Does that mean that God Almighty has been insulted and we're supposed to kill anybody that makes a painting of Jesus? We see all kinds of pictures of him. Long hair, short hair, bearded, not bearded, young, middle-aged. Some of them, he looks so saccharine sweet you almost want to puke. Others, he looks like a manly kind of a guy like you might expect. Remember, Jesus was a carpenter. He if he had something to build, whether it was a table or a house, he couldn't just run down to Jerusalem Lumber and order 400 board feet of nice, clean lumber. He'd have to fix it up himself. So you imagine his hands were probably pretty rugged. Any of you men that work in the trades, your hands are usually pretty rough because it's hard work. And most of the work, if not all of it, was done out in the sun, so he was probably swarthy looking. I have seen only a couple of depictions of Jesus as I would imagine he looked like. And he didn't look like one of these little simpry, whimpery guys. He looked like a manly kind of guy. He looked real, That aside, if I tried to draw my idea of what Jesus looked like, does the Bible say I have to be killed? Are there any prophets that tell me I have to be killed? Only in Islam, folks. It's the only place where you have this madness that says you've got to murder people if they try to depict Muhammad. The Muslims would like you to believe that they don't view Muhammad the same as we Christians view Jesus, but that can't be true. Because remember, the ideal for every Muslim, man or woman, child, it doesn't matter, the ideal is to emulate as closely as possible the prophet, so-called, Muhammad. Now think about that for a minute. We've been down this road before. What was Muhammad? Well, he was a murderer, he was a rapist, he was a pedophile, he was a thief, he was a slaveholder. Who knows what other things he was? Is that what we are supposed to emulate? Is that what the human race is supposed to emulate? Is that not satanic prima facie? I think so. Anyway, so these cowboys, these Islamic cowboys showed up, and they got killed. They went in to commit murder, and hello, they got killed. And it was interesting. There was a Simpson. The FBI made a statement here. It says, while all the facts are not yet in, last night's attack serves as a reminder that free and protected speech, no matter how offensive to some, never justifies violence of any sort. Good. I agree. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, one of Obama's boys, said in a statement Monday evening, adding that, quote, we urge that members of the public not misdirect anger and suspicion at those simply because of their religious faith. Did he mean the Muslims? I guess so, because it was the Muslims that showed up to commit the murders. And yet, just like Obama, they never want to mention. In fact, have you been following this thing on television? There have been some transcripts that have been released from the 911 calls that were going on from inside the homosexual bar there. The name of it eludes me. Doesn't matter. You know what I'm talking about. And any reference that even comes close to intimating that it might have been a Muslim or in the name of Allah or anything else has been redacted from the official statements. The official statements are being redacted because in the wisdom of those who serve their master Obama, we do not want to in any way, shape, or form put any kind of an onus on the Muslim community for this horror. Really? Let's see, we go on. The inaugural Muhammad art exhibit and contest offered a $10,000 prize for cartoons of the Islamic prophet, depictions that are considered blasphemous by many Muslims around the world. And let's see, the event was sponsored by the American Freedom Defense Initiative, AFDI, and attended by its president and co-founder, Pamela Geller. If you have the opportunity, if you like to do any search, just get on Google or whatever you like to use and search, look up Pamela Geller. You'll do yourself a favor. Pamela Geller is a warrior, and God bless her. She is a very courageous woman because she refuses to be a doormat for Islam or the people in this country who would like to shut anybody up who dares to speak out against Islam. Anyway, she and this other organization are listed as hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a virulent form of the ACLU. Okay, so much of that. I want to share with you what I think is one of the a wonderful column that was written by Jonathan Dinger, the pastor at my church. It was in this Sunday's Idaho State Journal. Now, those of you who subscribe to the Idaho State Journal, you may or may not have read it. Maybe you're not interested in his column. But there are a lot of people. This program doesn't show just locally. It shows literally around the country. I guess you could say around the world because it goes all the way to Australia. So there are people who would not have read this article. So please allow me to share this with you. It was written by Reverend Jonathan Dinger, and it was in Sunday, June the 18th, Idaho State Journal. Saturday, my muse, off camera, Saturday, June the 18th. Yeah. How could I forget? My brother's birthday. All right. And it states, at the time of this writing, the death toll from Orlando's Pulse nightclub is 49. What's being termed the nation's worst mass killing by a single shooter is prompting many emotions in our nation and around the world. Horror is predominant among them, and was my initial reaction upon hearing this tragic and now too common news. We should be horrified that any human life is stolen, whether it's people dancing in a nightclub, the unborn, or those lost to war and drone attacks, or a suicide bomber in the Middle East. I pray that we never become so numbed to the violence exacted upon others that it ceases to touch our own hearts. I'm horrified to see the bodies of victims as well as the terror in the voices and faces of the survivors in the midst of this grotesque act of murder. I'm also horrified that within moments of the media sharing of these events, national political leaders immediately take the opportunity to politicize the event and call for either far more stringent gun laws or call for the almost indiscriminate arming of the population. I'm also horrified that a leader of a so-called Christian ministry was captured spouting virulent rhetoric against the gay population and the LGBT lifestyle, essentially celebrating the deaths of gay people in the name of God. My wife watched this character on the internet, and she said it was absolutely disgusting. And he calls himself a Christian and a minister in, what was the name of that? Some Baptist church? Was it down in Texas or something? In Phoenix, some way out there Baptist church. And that's not an indictment of all Baptist any more than that Baptist group that goes around with these hate signs and tries to go to funerals of veterans and all that and wreak havoc. That is not the Baptist faith. These people can call themselves Baptists, but it doesn't make them true believers, so to speak. Anyway, I'm also horrified that while the media delighted in reporting the previous story, the shooting itself seemed to prompt an outpouring of even more vile rhetoric from the extreme wing of Islam, dozens of which have been making their viral way around the internet. I'm also horrified that while the arrival of 12 comfort dogs was celebrated, the news outlets I watched made no mention that these dogs were immediately provided by Lutheran Charities and the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. I'm also horrified that spokespeople of the LGBT community blamed the shooting upon Christians, especially those who oppose establishing separate anti-discrimination laws based on behavior and who uphold a different biblical worldview. I'm also horrified that a 2-year-old child was tragically killed in what is an exceedingly rare alligator attack, and that the internet and blogosphere were inundated with people choosing to pillory the parents of this child. Pray no tragedy happens to your child. Here's my 2 cents on the matter. It doesn't matter if you like or dislike nightclubs, gay people, gun laws, or guns. It doesn't matter if you think you're a better parent, better Christian, better citizen. It doesn't matter what agenda you're trying to promote. To me, something that does matter is that our horror should be limited to the senseless taking of life and the attitude that I know so much better than you about blank, that I'm able to dictate through violent actions or violent words whether you will be safe or not. Whether it is the media or politicians or so-called Christian ministers or LGBT spokespeople, forwarding your agenda while others are bleeding is not okay. The comfort dogs provided were from an agency of my denomination, a conservative Lutheran group that upholds traditional, classic positions on marriage and lifestyle. Would you expect that we would cheer these events in Orlando? Or send specially trained golden retrievers to show simple human decency, compassion, and mercy? I know we have to sell papers and ad time on TV, but my guess is that the horrors I shared above are shared by most. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm far too naive, but I believe that we should be even more horrified that those who want to promote a horrifying agenda are given the podium. I'm guessing that's what happened in Jerusalem 20 centuries ago. A Jewish rabbi known for thinking and acting outside the box, but little known outside of a 70 square mile corner of the planet, was summarily executed by Roman authorities for causing a disturbance. His life was traded for a radical extremist. A religious terrorist went free instead of Jesus. But this same Jesus sat on the hillside outside Jerusalem and wept for its violence against those who came to bear the call of God to repent, to return, to be healed by the grace and mercy of God. This Jesus was horrifically abused, tortured, and executed, and all the while had only mercy and forgiveness upon his lips. Why? Because this Jesus saw the hurts in others and sought to heal them. Sadly, the events of Orlando show that so many, from those in the highest office to the lowest levels of society, see those hurts and seek to turn them to their own advantage. Maybe, just maybe, we should pray to see the world through the eyes of Jesus, to weep at the hurts and to act in mercy. This is not condoning or affirming or whatever you might think it is. Jesus acted because there was brokenness of all kinds, from violence to living outside of God's will at any level. And he died with mercy and grace on his lips. And Jonathan M. Dinger is pastor of Grace Lutheran Church and headmaster of Grace Lutheran High School. I thought this, I don't read it nearly as well as it was written, and I hope that that I was able to underscore the passion and the compassion in the statements made by Pastor Dinger. Well, we have a little, here's one I think you might find interesting, about the Muslims. Let's see. Bear with me, I've got to find this. All right, June 12th. This is from the Gateway Pundit. Imam, speaking in Orlando, said gays must be killed out of compassion. I know, you think, what? This is an article by Jim Hoft. The United West investigative team reported in April on an Islamic imam who was invited to speak at the Husseini Islamic Center in Sanford, Florida. The Husseini Islamic Center invited Sheikh Farouk Sekaleshafar to speak at their holy mosque. Dr. Sekaleshafar said the killing of homosexuals is the compassionate thing to do. In a 2013 speech, Sheikh Sekaleshafar said this regarding gays, quote, "Death is the sentence. We know there's nothing to be embarrassed about this. Death is the sentence. We have to have that compassion for people, for homosexuals. It's the same out of compassion. Let's get rid of them now." This is from a high holy man in the Islamic faith. Islamic law also mandates a death sentence for blasphemers and apostates. The Sheikh Sekaleshafar and the Husseini Islamic Center mosque advocate those legal rulings as well. So I don't know if he's Sunni, Shia, I don't know. I'm assuming he's Sunni. That's the most virulent form of Islam. But according to him, gays, homosexuals must be killed out of compassion. And how much more twisted can a thinking be? Let's see. Oh, did you see this? Now, you don't have to be a Catholic to have this come home to you. As I've shared with you before, I was raised as a Catholic. And I'm no longer a Roman Catholic. I'm Catholic with a small c, meaning the universal body of Christ, the universal church, however you want to say it. But that doesn't mean that I don't see the Vatican as an important part of the Orthodox Christian world. So you can imagine well, maybe you can't, but what I thought when I heard this. This is from a column called Jews News, June 8th. Vatican to hold Islamic prayers for the first time in history. That alone, I was astonished that this current Pope, I don't understand this man's reasoning, the current Pope invited the high mucky-mucks of Islam to come and give Islamic prayers in the Vatican. That's no different than inviting Satan into the dinner tent and asking him to pray for you, before dinner. I mean, my mind is boggled that the pontiff, supposedly the spokesman for the Church of Rome, the number one guy, Peter's descendant, so on and so forth, as invited. And remember, Islam has been telling Rome for years they're going to fly the ISIS flag over the Vatican. They're going to just like they're going to fly it over the White House. Well, anyway, on Sunday, now this is June 8th, on Sunday, for the first time ever, the readings from Qur'an will be heard at the Vatican. Now, if you're an Orthodox Christian, as I am, and there are some who would probably call me an extremist in saying this. First of all, I believe that the Qur'an is Satan on paper. So to bring Satan into the Vatican, it sends shivers through me. This move was initiated by the Pope Francis in order to bring peace between Israelis and Palestinians. So they had to come to the Vatican and have Satan's emissaries coming into the Vatican. During his visit last week to Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority, Pope Francis invited Israeli President Shimon Peres and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. Peres' spokesman has announced in Times of Israel that Abbas, Peres, and Pope Francis will be joined by Jewish, Christian, and Islamic religious leaders. According to the officials, these evening prayers would be a pause in politics and have no political aim behind it other than the desire to bring peace and respect to the Israeli-Palestinian relations, states the Associated Press. And the Associated Press could be known as Pravda West, it's truth. The word Pravda means truth in Russian, I'm told. I view the Associated Press as being just as legitimate as Pravda. The Vatican will broadcast the event worldwide through the official website. However, Reverend Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the custodian of Catholic Church property in the Holy Land, has announced that people should keep their expectations low when it comes to this event. No one should think peace will suddenly break out on Monday or that peace is any closer, he said to Associated Press. The Vatican has also announced that on Friday, the Pope also held a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and both leaders discussed possible ways of promoting peace and stability in Asia. So this Pope, regardless of what you think of him, has literally, in my opinion, I mean, this is the way I look at it, he has invited Satan into the house of God to pray. Okay, well, let's see. We maybe have time for one short one here. This is one I love. This one. This is from Breitbart. And Breitbart, they've gone through a real metamorphosis. They used to be very extremely right-wing. Now they're becoming, I don't know what they are. They've gone ever since Breitbart himself was murdered. It's going through all kinds of things. But however, A massive fire at Dusseldorf's major international trade fair grounds yesterday has been followed by reports that the blaze was set deliberately by migrants who were angry because of Ramadan. Officially, some 160 migrants were resident at Hall 18 of the Mess Dusseldorf Conference Center, but it was a facility plagued by racial conflict which had seen violence sparked before. Dusseldorf's Express newspaper reports these conflicts were not between European German staff and their guests, but between the predominantly Arab residents and a minority of Afghans who sided with the security staff running the facility, who were mainly Iranian. According to the testimony of several burly Moroccan refugees, quoting, which the paper had spoken to even as the hall burnt down, the Iranians employed by the German state to look after other migrants from around the world, and this is a quote, had deliberately not woken the Arabs in time for their Ramadan breakfast following a long-run dispute. Just 3 weeks ago, there had been another much smaller fire at the exhibition center as a migrant set fire to his mattress in protest against the accommodation. These people are truly, truly grateful for the help they're getting. Severe beatings are the order of the day for many Christian migrants in the care of German state who have given uniforms and authority to the exact people that they fled the Middle East from in the first place. The Christians are being beaten by the Muslims who were given uniforms and authority by the Germans. The hospital report of one Christian who was beaten near to death by Turkish and Arab descent guards read, skeleton contusion, monocular hematoma, right stump chest trauma, blunt abdominal trauma history. Patient was today beaten by 4 security people, Muslims. Since a massive headache and pain in the abdomen, patient was brought and it goes on, another Christian telling how the guards who have been empowered by the German state are beating up on Christians, the Middle Easterners are. Well, folks, that's it. I've got a ton of stuff I would love to have shared with you, but we just don't have time. So I want to thank you for joining us. I do hope you'll remember that you can reach us at YouTube, Ralph Lillig. You can also go to YouTube, Pocatello Community Media, and find it there. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. We will see you perhaps Sunday and certainly next week. Good night.